Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Improv Network podcast. This is a series of conversations aimed at building stronger connections throughout the improv community. I'm James Quesada.
And I'm Bob Wick.
And we are your education team for the Improv Network. If you haven't, go to theimprovnetwork.org. Check out all of the great resources. I say it every episode. I really hope that you have by now gone.
Yeah. You sound like the slightest bit defeated. Like, if you... Come on.
I'm watching the analytics on this website, and I'm like, there's no way that everybody's going. So we need 100% attendance on this website call to action, okay? There's plenty of resources there. You can make yourself a profile for yourself as an improviser, your teams, and your theater, your festivals, all sorts of things. You can check out blogs and interviews. There's an improv FAQ page, which is where the archive of these streams is found, and mini lecture videos on improv topics as well. And right now you're either watching us on the Improv FAQ YouTube channel or the Improv Network group page or the Improv Network main page. So that's where you can find us for streaming. And if you didn't know, we are also an audio only podcast. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts, and take us on your commute to work. Put us in your ear. Put us in your earballs and
earballs. All right.
Eardrums.
Yeah. No. You know what? It's your birthday. You can call the ear parts whatever you want to. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way.
Thanks. To be fair, it was yesterday, but it's birthday weekend.
Man, it is.
It's whenever I say it is, okay? Yeah. Today's my birthday. That's really how it should be. Is like you should get like a moving birthday card that you can just be like, I'm celebrating my birthday today. I want to do it.
It's just a construct.
Yeah, I want to do it in the summer this year. Okay. With all that housekeeping out of the way, we are very excited to have our guest for this episode. She's a Portland-based improviser, the artistic director and co-founder of Curious Comedy out in Portland, as well as the creator of Ruby Rocket, Private Detective, which will be the topic of our episode today. We're very excited to welcome Stacey Hallal.
Yeah. Hello. Happy birthday. You didn't tell me it was your birthday weekend.
I'm really not a big birthday person. No. Bob kind of knows that.
And I won't let him not be one. I'm a huge birthday person. I'm still celebrating mine from April. I don't care. I love
Happy birthday from April. I also like the idea of eye drums and earballs.
Good. Thank you.
That's our other podcast.
So Stacey, I usually do a good job of asking this before we go live and I say someone's name out loud for the first time. But did I get it right, Hallal?
Yeah, you did, actually.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good job.
Pat on back.
Yeah, it's funny because it seems like a simple name, but there's a lot of ways to say it.
So. I'll check with everything. I'll check to make sure it's pronounced Johnson if that's your last name.
It makes sense because it might not be. Might be Janssen. Might be Janssen. You never know.
It's Finnish.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks so much for joining us. Before we crack into the conversation about Ruby Rocket, you're in the middle of opening Curious Comedy right now. You said you're in week 3. How's all that going?
It's going well. It's a ton of work. It's really intense. I did not expect it to be quite like as much like opening for the first time as it has been. Like everything has gone to sleep in the 19 months. Like the toilet was broken. We fixed that toilet. Then the other toilet broke, and like beer lines have dried out in the bar. Like, you know, computer that was functional, but at the end of its life is now 2 years older and needs to be replaced. Like everything is demanding some love and attention. So we're getting through it. I think I've touched almost everything in the space now. And the performers are getting out there, and we're also dusting off the rust that we've gathered, and the audiences are out, and it's been really nice and to be back. Like, this is the fun part, right? It's been 2 years of the hardest part, with no reminders. Like, this is what we're doing this for. So
yeah, good to have the community back in person. And yeah, I imagine for a lot of places, it's like in zombie apocalypse movies or shows where you go to, the store that no one's been in for years, and it's like, my God, what happened here? What?
That's right. The cobwebs.
What was going on with the last people to be here?
Exactly. I was a real estate agent for a year, and like, you tour all these houses and you look at them, and there was always like a period of time that if a house was empty, it's a difference between when it's just fresh, the people just moved out and painted everything and cleaned it. And then, like I would always say, the boogeyman moves in and things just start to get weird.
Yeah.
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 Well, cool. Yeah. Congrats on reopening.
Thank you. Actually, it's making me think I should do like a little walk with some sage around. Maybe I'll do that today.
You got to cover your bases,
Clean the energy as much as everything else. Yes.
Treat your houses like James treats people's last names. That's why I say.
That's a great way to think of it, Bob. That's right. That should be a t-shirt.
Yeah. Well, so I really am eager to talk about Ruby Rocket. It sounds like it sounds like a show that I would love in all of its renditions. And for starters, so Ruby Rocket has a life as a live show, a comic book, a web series, animated web series, and soon to be podcast, right?
That's right.
That's amazing. Like, one of my things, I'm jealous to hear that, because like, I'm the type of person who has like a lot of different ideas that I want to do something with. And I would really love to have one idea that I do a bunch of different things with.
Yeah.
And so I really want to talk about that. But before we do, can you give us a little bit of just a description and backstory of what Ruby Rocket is and how it came to be?
Yes. So back in, I think it was 2001, or two. It was 2001 or 2002. I was really new to improv, just a couple years in, and Mad TV was doing like a nationwide search for women to audition, and we had just this. I was in an all women's group, a female duo, and we had a 1-page website, and they reached out and asked us to submit. And
that's pretty cool. They reached out to you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
All the way. Like, I was in Portland then, so they were really looking outside of the main hubs, which was super cool.
Yeah. Good for them and for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we submitted videos, and they invited us to come down. Like, we were in the not rejected, but not paid to fly in or put up. But like, if I wanted to get there and audition, we could go. So we were like, sure, let's do it. So we went down, and I rewrote my original characters the night before the audition.
Wow.
With my friend on the phone. Yeah, which is like, now knowing what it's like you would probably have some characters that you've done a million times and take the best of those. But sure, I was new and young to the whole thing. So I rewrote everything, and then and I do come at improv. I think that a lot of people, I always say we come at it either first as a performer or a writer. And because that's what we're doing, we're writing and performing simultaneously. And I definitely came from writing and had a lot of stage fright. So I was like so sick. I was sick the whole day. But anyway, so I went and did my audition. Did not get hired, but loved this character. I just connected with her, and I was working at an animation studio that is, it was Will Vinton Studios at the time. Now it's Leica. They made Coraline and
cool.
Box Trolls, Kubo. And so I had friends there, and I was like, is there anyone you think might want to turn this into a little animated short? And I thought, we'll do it with Flash animation. It's really fast. And so I got connected to a Flash animator who was willing to talk about it because he loves noir. I mean, he's as passionate about noir as I am. It's a noir detective comedy. And he agreed to do it for free, but only if he could hand draw it in traditional animation, because he did Flash for a living, but at his heart, he's a hand-drawn animation guy. So
Gotcha.
yeah, we agreed, and 3 years later, he produced a 3-minute video. We recorded the voice together. Like, I had moved to Chicago during the course of it. Like, a lot
year
of
per
stuff
minute.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he did it all on paper back then, and he scanned it all. Like, his wife was helping him scan these thousands of illustrations. And then he was coloring them in the computer and then compositing them over background drops. I can show you what it looked like.
Yeah,
Give you
please.
just a little. Here, let me make this full screen. He's super talented, and he's been my partner on Ruby ever since then. So here's just a little snippet. She drinks a lot. Ruby is a heavy drinker. And I don't have the audio hooked in, but just so you can see a bit. But that's what it looked like.
Yeah, which, you know, I get the appeal for the hand drawn, because it has a very different and arguably more appreciable character, or like a aesthetic to it when it's hand drawn.
Yeah, and when you're talking about noir, right, you're talking about something that is of a specific time period also, right? So having it be animated in a traditional style. She keeps cigarettes in her bosom.
She dispenses them through it.
Yes, she does. And then when I started doing the live show, we tried to the Grimm was shooting here, and we were trying to get a Grimm special effects person to build me a like device so I could dispense
like a Pez dispenser.
Yeah, he's like, it has to be like triggered lightly enough that I could just go like this and pop, but he's like, but not so easily triggered that it would just accidentally start shooting cigarettes.
It might also be funny,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But really I've just ended up I pull a lot of things out of my top. So
gotcha.
But so we did that, and this was early days of YouTube. So we did pretty well. Like 30,000 views was a big deal back then. And there was this thing called Anna Boom, and everyone was trying to be YouTube then, because that's like YouTube was where Netflix is now. So everybody was trying to be YouTube, and so they wanted to be a YouTube of animation. They bought that. They paid us $5,000 an episode to make 5 more. And you'll see those look a little different because we did them. Sam came up with this really brilliant way to do traditional animation faster.
Oh, yeah, it took me like 15 years.
Yes, exactly. Precisely the problem.
We still own episodes. Oh.
Yeah, but what we did for these is we hand drew them on a tablet. So that whole paper to computer section was eliminated. So we put together a crew of animators that we love. So we also had help, right? Because we had $5,000, which, if you know anything about animation or video production, $5,000 for 3 minutes is still not a very big budget. But he got a bunch of high school students. He had a friend who was a teacher teaching Adobe stuff, and he had a bunch of high school interns did all the coloring. And so we produced those 5 pretty fast. And of course, it was exactly when I was opening the theater. It was like during the 6 months we were building out Curious Comedy Theater.
Wow.
So I was trying to like write like at 3:00 in the morning in between, building it, like literally painting and building the theater. So then
you were physically, mentally exhausted. You were trying to write episodes.
Yeah. So we did 5 of those, and I still like them. They're not like the first ones is more standalone. I think those are character studies of the world. Like, this is a world that I just see and know and feels complete to me. And so, I mean, the way that you do tons of things, I guess, James, is like not let go of one idea for 20 something years, so
Yeah. Yeah.
so we didn't want to
Double
invest.
down on it. Yeah.
Exactly. And it just keeps coming back. It just keeps coming back. So we didn't want to work on it much more after that because of we didn't own it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah. So
So putting
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead. I've talked.
Well, because I was curious. You said that there was 30,000 views on it, and I checked out what's on YouTube or what I found there, and then I was like, this is really great quality. Like, and even from like the first episode through the next few, I could see that the production value was increasing rapidly, both for the visually and for the audio, and that the credits went from being like 5 people quickly
Exactly.
to then being like a whole suite of a team. And I was like, this is insane, because some of those videos on the Ruby Rocket channel only have a few hundred views, and I was like, that is wild that they wouldn't have more. But so I'm guessing what happened is, did you get released and then you're able to now republish them, or like what's the story with how it ended up now?
Exactly. We weren't able to share them or promote them, and which now everyone knows is not the way to. Why would you remove the artist who has their own friends and family and hopefully somewhat of a following from actually publicizing their own thing? And the same thing happened with pitching it. So they were taking it and they were pitching it, and they didn't invite us to the pitches, which is so frustrating. And the feedback literally was the Adult Swim was interested, and they said, this is really close, but we don't think anybody would be interested in a female protagonist.
Yikes.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is 20 years ago, right? So even 10 years ago, even yesterday, things are still imbalanced. Yeah. But at the time, it was like Buffy the Vampire Slayer was huge. Right. Like there was a big wave of women leads. Yeah. So that was an unfortunate. It was, I think it was just ahead of its time, like in terms of YouTube and social media, and in terms of, networks having any idea that people wanted to see anything other than white straight men's stories. So we just let it sit dormant until a couple years ago they went out of business, and we had, thank goodness, put a clause in there that the ownership would revert back to us if they went out of business.
Wow. So, but otherwise it never would have ended. There wasn't like a final date on the contract or anything. Wow.
No, I mean, we were just two unknown creators, right?
Yeah, it's understandable.
So the other people who had a little, I think had a little more clout at the time had better deals than we did. But that was our first thing. So we did it, and we didn't make any money on the sale, right? It was the money on the sale was exactly the amount we spent on the production of the next 5. So that's why we were just like, okay, we're not going to invest anything more for free into a thing we don't own. But then I saw Rebecca Northern's Blind Date. Have either of you heard of it or seen it?
I've heard of it, have not seen it.
No, I haven't seen it either.
That she is somebody you should definitely talk to. I mean, she has a million great shows. She's from Canada, an incredible artist who's been creating super innovative shows for a really long time. Loose Moose, like early member Loose Moose in Calgary. So she does this show Blind Date where she, the premise is, and it's clown. So she has like a little cute clown nose on and this red dress, and she's sitting at a table, and there's a little like French restaurant kind of tablecloth. And the premise is that her character Mimi has been stood up for a date, and she asks if there's anyone who wants to take that person's place, and they pull someone from the audience, and they did some pre-screening to see who would be up for it, obviously, but they pull somebody out from the audience, and she has a 90-minute show with an audience member.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That's brave. I love it.
It's really great. It has like some real structure points throughout, but I've seen it a couple of times, and I've seen it with a couple different Mimis because now she's expanded it. She's toured it all over, and there are a few different people who can play that lead now. We had been in talks right before the pandemic. I was going to train to do it in Atlanta, and then everything got canceled. So I hope I get to do it sometime. And I didn't really know her well. I had just met her once, and I saw the show, and I wrote her this message like, if you ever want anyone, like, she didn't know me. And she was like, well, I really appreciate your moxie. But that's my jam. I just love playing with strangers. So it started so then I was like, all right, I'm going to do Ruby Rocket, inspired by that. But all the other players were from the audience. I'd pick 3 people. I'd put them to the table to the side. And one would be the client. One would be the cop who's / love interest. And then one would be the bad guy, even though the bad guy wasn't necessarily the one who ultimately was guilty.
Gotcha.
So I did that like 50 times.
3 strangers. That is a lot to manage. And so there's no other like ensemble or like, bit players that pop in throughout the show.
No, she does in hers. She has some really fantastic backup. And I think especially because of like her content is much more intimate. So having some backup also helps. And her show's like 90 minutes, I think, with it's 2 acts. But yeah, so for Ruby, no, I'm just sending them back and forth through the monologues. So the noir trope of the detective delivering monologues is kind of how I can direct from the inside and sent people back and forth. So I toured that a couple Canadian fringe festivals. I did about 50 times.
Okay.
And then I was like, this would be really fun with improvisers.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did develop it into an ensemble show.
I did, and it's actually, but it's still rotating. It's a rotating ensemble. So
Gotcha.
we do have a home base that eventually was a core that rehearsed together, but we always have guests and stuff. So there's always a moving part.
And so in the 50 show run of doing it with audience members, part of the reason that you're like, I want to try this with other improvisers is because I imagine it's exhausting to do it with it amazes me that you would even internally direct 3 strangers from the audience in a genre show.
I really only had one that got out of control.
Okay.
And
I imagine a lot of the time you also get like students of improv and people who are interested in being on stage to be there. And even if it's authentically like, unplanned and randomly selected or whatever, it's probably people who know something about what they're doing or want to be doing.
The only time I really had a hard time was an improviser who was really just not listening and just so excited to be on stage that she just took over. And that's when I learned that it's noir and I have the power to kill any character that I want at any time. Like, obviously there's always, some kind of murder incident, but I had never used it as part of my arsenal until even after that. I didn't even think of it in the moment. It was after that I was like, damn it. And so it would be harder.
You might not have yes stand your bullet, so that could have been real weird.
It's true. I have whiskey that I drink. She took and poured it out all over the stage, like at a fringe festival where they have 15 minutes to turn over the space. The techs, it was just disrespectful to the space and the technicians and the stage managers and stuff. But mostly it was really, really fun. But yes, there's a different way you improvise when you're having to take care of the audience members that which I really enjoy, but I was like, how would this be with somebody who's really going to take this on and that I can rest and just enjoy watching them bring their improv skills and training. And now I've gotten to do it with like some of my biggest heroes in the whole world, which is amazing. I've done it with Susan Messing, Stephanie Weir, Bob Dassey, Ron Lynch. So that's been really such a treat.
Yeah,
like
that's amazing.
Dream come true.
And is that part of the programming that you're bringing back with Reopening Curious, or is it something you put on the shelf for now?
I just haven't. I'll find a spot for it. I just haven't yet. I'm just trying to get everybody else settled and situated and then figure out where it fits in. It also has this technical, let me show you. We do this my boyfriend, a big reason we met online, and I actually was like, oh, I've been looking for some visuals. And he's a visual artist, like with projections. And I don't know how to make this full screen, so we're just gonna look at it not full screen. But and then we started, but 6 months later, like we were a couple and doing shows in Edmonton. But so we do these visuals where he projects in the
Oh,
background.
yeah.
And it's either noir images like that, or like this. It's kind of a jumbotron. So that's me and Bob Dassey, probably my favorite hero of improv of all time, like my biggest teacher. But so he's shooting it and then projecting it behind us like a jumbotron, but he blends it with these noir images. And so you can see it's like the brick wall, and
Yeah.
and then he also puts it through an analog glitch box that gives it kind of a 30s old movie look. And that's been really fun. So it looks like, when you go see Rocky Horror and people are acting in front of the movie, it's that effect. It's like you're actually seeing a movie, but then there are live actors in front of it. So that's the other element we've added.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very cool. Just the production, because it's like subtle. Or I guess it's not necessarily subtle, but like it's not necessary, but it adds a lot. Like
like this cool nuance to it.
But without being really distracting, right? It's just like it adds a nice little aesthetic.
There's times, and our space, a big reason is like our space is huge. At Curious, we have 2 spaces now. That's why I'm sort of trying to decide which space I want to bring it back in, because there's pros and cons. But we have 170 seat theater with 25-foot high ceilings. So it does take a certain amount of spectacle, I think. You can do great long form in there without anything. But if you're starting to bring people from short form into long form, filling the space is really nice. And like there's one episode we have where a show, and we've shot it, and this character always has his tongue out, and then he dies and his tongue is still out, and I was like dragging his body out, and his head was between my legs. I realized the actor is seeing right up my dress, right? It just became this like awkward moment that I and he and the audience all became aware of at the same time. And like John can really heighten that moment by zooming in, on Matt's face, and Matt's trying not to laugh and hold his tongue out at the same time, while being dragged, and you see his gross tongue hanging out on like this huge screen. And so it adds, it can really heighten those moments that you can't see so close up. It
literally magnifies the details of a show, which again is great. Like for tech elements to be able to do that, as opposed to kind of like toe the line between, especially for like improv, which is so kind of like a lot of the time no real props or costume pieces, or at least like ambiguous enough ones to do whatever. It's tough when the tech comes in to retain that, but like when you have an element like that, that's really just blowing up the things that are already the raw elements of the show.
Exactly.
Is excellent.
Yeah, it's really fun.
So I'm curious about going from the audience version to the ensemble version, because I'm as a director, I've created shows that I've internally directed before, and I always have a really hard time. There's ego in this, of course, but I have a hard time playing fully if I'm directing it internally. Obviously, it's a tough duality to have, and maybe not one that you should.
Right. For sure.
But do nonetheless.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, though, I have a tough time letting go if I give up the direction to somebody else, because I'm like, I just have a vision for this that I really want to bring to life in a particular way. And so I'm wondering, like, especially for a genre show, and one that you have spent all this time internally directing, how was that transition? Was it completely freeing and you could now just be an ensemble member, or is it still kind of challenging to be like, oh, I don't want to, am I too high gravity or holding back too much, or what is that like?
Live, I can do it. We did try like a podcast launch with Colin Mockery and some other people, and we were using this new technology that what's it called? Pineapple, that Chris Griswold's and his partner Michael have developed, and that was too much. Like live, I can manage, and I'm not really trying to direct the actors, right? We already know the look, so that directing is done ahead of time. But I'm directing the story. So, and the difference between, Blind Date has a very like some points built in every time you see it, and then what's cool is to see how it gets there with all these different audience members. Ruby Rocket is completely unstructured, other than the fact that I'm going to pop out and pop back in from monologues. So I'm doing a ton of story building as we go. Wow. And I love that. That's like, that's my strength, I think, as an improviser, is seeing like the story. And it was my weakness when I started too, because I would be like, why did that person do that? Obviously the story was going here, you know? Like,
yeah. You met my internal monologue. I know that. I know that performer. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, you did this and I did this. Obviously, this is the one story that was intended to happen.
We've been building this outcome for the last 20 minutes. And why did you turn that screw? That's the wrong screw.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had to learn, right? Like, and that's why Open Court, which is a show we do at Curious, but started by a group called International Stinger in Chicago at the Playground, where anyone can come play, which is where this passion of mine of playing with anyone came from. It forced me to be like, whatever happens, you have to make that the story now. So it was kind of a reaction to my worst habit that I really had to work on. Yes, banding, and no matter how much everyone in the room thinks, and then that's like the biggest surprise and the most fun sometimes. So really, I'm just trying to put that together, but I definitely get to lay back and enjoy my castmates in the improv ensemble. Like, they crack me up, they surprise me. Like, I have too much fun. I probably break too much during the show because I'm laughing, and it's noir, and I keep justifying it by being like, but it's a noir cartoon.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can be silly. It doesn't have to take itself too seriously.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I relate to that again a lot. So it's still your role. Your designated role is to direct the story. Does anyone else in the show pop out and do the
they can
the narrated transitions? Okay.
They have in the past. We had an episode where brilliant Katie Behrens was a character who was obsessed with my character. She was trying to become a detective and and was stalking Ruby Rocket. So then she started stealing the monologues too, which was hilarious.
Oh wow.
I love that.
But yeah, people can. I really have zero, like, that's my challenge. When we go in, it's 100% up to me to make everything everyone else does look good. And I think a lot of people come into it and they're afraid to break it. So I have to really assure them that they cannot break this show. Honestly, the worst thing that happens for me is actually when somebody is worried that I can't put it together, and then they come out and try to put it all together, because I've been building and building as we go. And then if someone else is like, this is what happened, and they're like, oh shit, okay. And then I have to like let go of everything I wrote and then incorporate all those ideas at once instead of letting it unfold, and I can incorporate it. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge, is when there's just another writer who's worried that it's not going to happen. But there are definitely times where like other people have provided huge pieces that pulled everything together. That's important, and they'll see it, they'll name it. That's cool. But when somebody comes out and tries to just sort of in exposition explain it all, okay.
Oh man, I have to wipe everything out of my brain.
Yep. But that's great. It's like, that's the muscle I'm trying to exercise, is let it go.
And then there's that weird thing, like, is that thing I'm going to say next dependent on where I was going or where I'm going now? And then We'll have fun. It's okay.
Yeah. To me, that's the annoyance theater training, right? It for me was coming on with something, with a lot, coming up with like a lot of world in your mind, and also being ready to let it all go immediately when somebody says something else.
Is there advice that you give to people who struggle with that? Because it's like sometimes it's something that you kind of want to, a habit that you want to curb from yourself or students or whatever it is. Like you said early on, it can really get in your way to be in that writer's mindset. And you need to learn to let go to some degree or entirely. But then I've realized in the last few years, the more that I meet people and see different styles, especially narrative and genre, that there is a way to apply that writer's brain in a really effective, excellent way that is still flexible. But I have a really hard time doing it. I have to like really be in one or the other. Like I'm either the designated writer for the show and directing things, and I feel like I can do that well enough, or it has to be like anything can happen, and on purpose I will turn on a dime and just not get myself stuck in that mode. So is there advice you give to people who are looking to like balance that in a healthy way in playing? Like how do you keep that writer's brain?
Yeah, I think you have to, it's like, come on with something in your hands, right? Like for sure, you have to have something, but also just hold loosely.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be ready to revise. So you still have what you had, but you just have to adapt. So when I went to Chicago, I studied at Comedy Sports Annoyance IO and Second City. And I feel like, when I teach, I talk a lot about how I think Comedy Sports is about taking care, or in short form in general, theater sports, taking care of the audience first.
Mm-hmm.
And IO was about taking care of your scene partner first. And Annoyance is about taking care of yourself first. And so those are the three balls we're trying to juggle every time we're on stage. So to me, like that writer's brain is taking care of yourself, and being willing to let it go at any point is my IO sort of brain. So I think cross training is super important.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you can practice those skills all the way across, because and they each grew up kind of in reaction to each other a bit,
Mm-hmm.
or at least Annoyance and IO did. Like at its worst, IO is two people getting on stage and being like, yeah, I'm going to support the shit out of you.
Yeah,
I'm going to support the shit out of you.
As soon as you do something.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. Who's got something?
Yeah.
And then at its worst, Annoyance is like, I'm a cowboy. I'm an astronaut. And like, we don't give a fuck that we're totally different worlds together.
Yeah. Toy Story.
Yes. Yeah.
At its worst, the Annoyance is Toy Story.
Yeah. It worked. But yeah, so I mean, I just think it's practice. I feel like it's like trying to drive. When you first drive, you're like, okay, foot on gas, foot on brake, foot on this, look, this, check this mirror, check side mirror. So I think just like you're like writer's brain, take care of the story, take care of my scene partner. Is the audience paying attention, or are we just having fun? Like all of those checks. But eventually, if you know that you have to tend to all of those, it starts to become more natural, I guess, over time.
Yeah, I
don't know if that's helpful.
Extremely, yeah. I think that I think you're right. Cross training is exactly the thing to benefit you. There is to really flex all of those styles and modes enough to where you can access them as needed.
I saw in your backdrop you have a question about short form, long form.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I came up, so I'm like an earlier generation who started with long form, right? When I started around the turn of the century, most people were doing short form, starting short form, and then would evolve to long form.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really till UCB, I think, that a lot of people started with long form first. but because my background was film, I was a radio, television, film major in school. That's a major stage fright when I was acting. And I liked Mike Leigh movies, like Life is Sweet. They're dramas, actually, he had the plot points, and then they improvised around the ensemble improvised around those plot points. And obviously Christopher Guest movies. So I had movies in mind. So short form was fun, but it never was like, this is what I wanted. And so then I went to a long form festival, and it was like, this is what I've always wanted, is an ensemble telling a story together. And like many people, I had an attitude about short form. And like, I loved the people who did it. Pat Short, who trained me my first short form real training at Comedy Sports here in Portland, was fantastic. He always talked to me about this. Like, it was very open, like, this isn't exactly what I want. But then I got like, yeah, for sure, I think a little long form snobby. And you know what? It's because short form was exactly what I needed. It's like,
yeah.
I needed to, once I started really doing short form after years of long form, I was like, oh, this is reminding me that this is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
This is reminding me to let go. This is reminding me to take care of the audience. This is helping me remove my filter and my judgment. So that has been a big part of helping me facilitate the letting go, and the having fun part is complementing my long form with short form.
That's so cool. Quick question. So with your character, with the stories you're telling, each show, is it a brand new slate, or do you bring back content from previous shows? So does this character have a history that you may reference? And sorry if you weren't at the last show, but this is something that happened. This is a character that's evolving. Because I've done shows like this before where, you have characters come back, and it's always been a big debate, like, well, not every audience member is going to see every show, but I don't care. If you have a character that has a history, why not reference it? It shouldn't be a major plot point, but it could be a reference.
That's a great question. And yes, I try to make it so nobody who's there would feel left out. If you went to all of them, there's repetition.
Yeah.
Certain characters get introduced in a certain way. So like usually, and not every, and there is no hard and fast. Part of the cartoon get out of jail free card is that also, like, Kenny dies in every South Park, right?
Yeah.
So there's times Rick's been the bad guy. He's my love interest in the cop. Rick is the only hard and fast returning character. And he's not in every show necessarily either, but he's always brought up to the cast ahead of time, and there's like a hat for him and stuff. But there is a canon that is growing that I love. There's an episode where Ruby falls in love with with her client and gets a tattoo in honor of her. And I can't even remember it now, though. I have to look it up. It's something like Laura Sams is in one of the cast members of the regular ongoing show here at Portland, is so funny. And her character was speaking in a lot of idioms, like every day is a glorious day, or, something to that effect. And then, spoiler alert, she dies. And so in her honor, Ruby gets a tattoo. So in my mind, forever, Ruby has that tattoo. Whether you're watching a story that happened pre or post that tattoo is up, to me, I'm always in a bar. Ruby is in a bar talking to someone, and what you watch is the flashback of the story.
Gotcha.
So they don't need to go in sequential order.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
That is a really interesting framing to have for it that you don't ever explicitly set up for the audience.
No, I didn't realize I've never made that overt till right now.
Yeah, that's
You're
great.
welcome, audience.
Because I do I do this opening where I usually pick on an audience member because I can't help but play with audience members. So I get their name and I flirt with them, and then I'll tell them a story, and if they like it, I'll buy them they have to buy me a whiskey, and if they whiskey and a dance, and then if they don't like it, then they get a dance and a whiskey. That's the premise. So I get a dance and a whiskey.
Yeah. Either way, good.
That's the premise in my mind.
And then, so with the podcast, I know you said you tried it, you did like a test run of it and weren't completely happy with the format. Is there a new rendition
No,
of it?
I am. I'm just not done editing it. That's
Oh,
all.
okay, gotcha.
It's just I'm obsessing about the editing of it. So there's one that I wrote, and that's the comic book was drawn out of the one that was actually written and cast, and Chris Fairbanks is the voice on it, and he's just one of the funniest human beings alive. There's a bunch of like Ron Lynch, Chris Fairbanks, Karen Kilgariff. I think they're stand-ups who have an improv spine, and they're very improvisational in everything they do. And so we've had a nice relationship with them at the theater, and they've come up and done some stuff with us and at different times. But like Chris and Karen know each other, and Ron and Chris, you know, they all spend time together. But why did I bring that up?
Well, I was asking you about the podcast. You're still editing.
Yeah, so I got to edit that one. But the comic book's been drawn and released since we recorded it, and then we have a bunch that are the live episodes. We have about 24 of them.
Wow!
So we're just mixing the audio, and there's things again to keep in mind when you know it's going to be a podcast. So if someone's doing something really physical, sometimes I'll try to, without it sounding weird to the audience, make sure that I comment on it in a way that a listener will know why people are screaming, laughing so loud. So yeah, it's just with the theater, this has been the project that won't die, but like never gets full attention either, to both me and my partner Sam's chagrin. So I'm hoping like once we start back up and the theater's flowing again, that I can give it the love and attention that it's deserved for these 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, you just get the toilet to flush, we'll be good, you know.
I mean, the thing is you start exactly. But you like start a theater because you're like, I just want to have an improv life. But your improv life is still, there's always going to be that side where you're fixing a toilet and fixing a broken window or yeah.
So I don't think I mentioned this at the top, but we do a subcategory of episodes, which would be this would be included under that umbrella, which is called a show and tell. And a lot of the time, it's shows that have had a run and have ended. And generally, the last thing that we ask is like, if you had to start it all over again today, what would you do differently? What would you definitely keep the same that you're really happy with? And I know we've touched on a little bit of that with like the deal with the animation company and everything, but like if you did have a fresh start with Ruby as a franchise, what would you do the same and differently?
That's a great question.
One of the things I'm most curious about is whether you would like it to be like whether you would start with one of these types first and build the rest around it, or would you still start with it as a animated pilot or like a sketch Mad TV style show, or what would be your lead?
I think I would. It's more of like a general life decision than necessarily the show, but I think I would. I'm trying to decide if this is even feasible since the theater is my job, right? But I probably would have focused more on it and made more time sooner.
Yeah.
And like believed in it more. But that's also hard to say because like 20 years ago, you couldn't access an audience like you can now.
Yeah, still true. Yeah. So I guess with the medium of YouTube, like, how would that change? Does that make it more appealing to do the animation sooner, or like there's also tons of ways to produce the live action stuff? Like, but you would use YouTube either way.
I think I would have just written more often. Here, let me show you since it's show and tell. Here's the comics. This is how like beautiful his illustrations are.
I said, wow, so much during this.
Like, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
And this is still all by Sam?
This is by Sam Neiman, and the
Cool.
comics and the merch are are illustrations he made as well. Ruby's pansexual here, so she's hitting on this lab assistant. But yeah, I mean, it's just gorgeous. His art is unbelievable. So I think I would have made more time just to write scripts, and I've developed my preferred way, which is like I like to brainstorm with people a bunch of episodes, then write a script, then cast it, have the actors improvise from that script, and then set the script, and then either shoot it either live or have Sam do the comics. Like, I just wish I had 20 Ruby scripts done. I think I would focus I just would have given it more space and time if I could.
Currently, how much time do you give it, like, per episode?
I mean, honestly, right now, I have not been able to do anything on it, and Sam's like waiting for a script, not patiently waiting for a script for the next comic book
reboot. You have walls to paint.
Yeah. And like the pandemic was like, oh, great. This is why I tried to release it then, because I was like, great, we're all stuck at home. We're going to do it. And I was like, oh, no, I'm just chasing funds every day to keep the theater alive. And also, exhausted from trauma. Right. So it just wasn't the productive time that I had hoped it would be. But that's my goal, is to make space for it now. But honestly, it's hard to say, because anything I think that I would do differently, I don't know that I would have learned what I've learned along the way.
Yeah.
About the story, the characters, about creative process.
Yeah. And I think that's what I love about doing the show and tell episodes is that, like, there's so many things that I know that I don't always like sit and process that I've learned or taken from a show, and until suddenly I'm doing something in a certain way with my next project, and I'm like, how did I get into that habit? For better or worse. But you take away things that we don't always take time to, like, sit and appreciate where it came from out of each process. Are there things that you would definitely do the same if obviously you and Sam make a great team, obviously, so I'm sure you'd still have that combo on board?
Absolutely.
Would you approach the production of it any differently? Or sorry, are there things about the production you would keep the same for sure?
Yeah, if I could do it sooner, I would. That's the process, is I would use that process I described. And I developed that from other projects that we've done. When Audible was hiring everybody to try to create content for them, that was super consuming for like 2 years and didn't result in anything that anyone can see or hear, but it helped me a lot learn how to write as an ensemble. I mean, I feel like it's all leading back to where I started, an ensemble creating a story that's like written through ensemble improvisation based on a structure. So even the things that have distracted me from Ruby have come back to it. But yeah, I wish I had known that path sooner. Like, I tried to shoot a film that was entirely improvised based on a thing, but like, you can't do all the improv in front of the camera because you're paying people a lot of money to stand there and shoot 1,000. Yeah. So like, that's when I learned, like, oh, you got to do that part in rehearsals. Then you lock it down, a lot like the Second City main stage process, right? You have your structure, you get your actors to embody those characters, to bring their own language to it, to surprise you and deepen and heighten the comedy of what you're doing, and then you edit that down and edit it down and edit it down, and then get more and edit it down, then you keep the best and you make something brilliant.
I suppose I want to tack on a little bit of a tangent question on that, because I really am curious about that like medium of re-improvising, right? I feel like, and I know that that's something that is in the Second City process, and where Bob and I are mutually from is Detroit. I'm out in New York now, but still, the Detroit community is largely Second City influenced. at its origins. But what I noticed at some point was like that there seems to be entirely improvised stuff, and then a lot of the stuff that gets like written, in my experience, is like sketches are like written, or like 1 hour shows are written and like tightly written. And I came across the idea in maybe a book at some point of like re-improvising as the way of developing material. And I was like, I feel like I don't see that a ton, but it sounds like you use it like as your main process is re-improvising.
Yes.
Is that like two separate worlds, or like, am I crazy when I'm like, when did it become that like sketches are tightly written to a T?
UCB, I think, is that. I think UCB has brought a lot of that culture to it. Not that they're the first, obviously, but into the crossover to the improv community. But I think it's whether you work as an individual or you like to work as an ensemble, right? So if you're somebody who does want, you're so right, you're like, every word has to be the word, and I don't want anyone to veer from the words, and I've crafted this a certain way, then you write your sketch at home and you cast people. And here in Portland, there's like kind of this community of people who write an entire sketch show by themselves, cast it, put it on, and they're great shows. I just don't like it's weird to be a writer who doesn't like working alone. Like I like working collaboratively.
I do, because I'm with you. I'm totally, because I like being across the room, like, here's a line, and we both smile at it, like, okay, yes, it's in. That's my editor.
Exactly. And I also am an editor. I was a video editor for years. That was my first job out of college. And I think that's probably my greatest strength is like editing shit down. And I like things to be really efficient storytelling. And improv is usually not, because we spend a lot of time trying to find it. Obviously, the most experienced people make it feel that way the whole time. And that's the goal, right? Is like, when I wrote sketch shows in Chicago with, like I had a couple duos, we would film ourselves at rehearsals and then go back and write from those rehearsals. But the thing was, I would have thought ahead of time, oh, every rehearsal, maybe we'll get one we like or two we like. But usually it was, you'd have a bunch of rehearsals where it was all shit. And then you'd have a rehearsal where everything was gold. It was like that day we were just tuned into each other. We were listening. We were just firing on all cylinders. And that day we just transcribed what came out and did a tiny bit of editing. Like but it's all about quantity. We had to do those other rehearsals to get to that rehearsal. But speaking of Detroit, I don't want to let that, I mean, another huge list of my favorites are out of Detroit: Mary Beth Monroe, Jamie Moyer, Tim Robinson, Sam Richardson. Detroiters, like they're just so great. I have a big heart for the whole Detroit community. So
that's so awesome to hear. And we love to wave the banner for Detroit when we can. So it's and I know a lot of those people are West Coast now, so I'm sure that there's been
but they're tight with each other still.
Exactly.
Like they really came up together and made each other great. We had Jamie Moyer and Mark, why am I blanking on
Evan Jackson?
Yes, Mark Evan Jackson on our fundraiser at the beginning of this year. And it was my dream to play with Mark Evan Jackson. And Mary Beth and Jamie had come up here. They're in a Ruby Rocket.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They're unbelievable. Oh my God, it's so fun. Like, it's just, Jamie is talk about somebody, like, I had to just let go and like let Jamie run the show. And like I was still putting the story together, but like the pieces, but she was just so funny, and she and Mary Beth are so great together. But what I love is Mark Evan Jackson, so dry. Right? So dry. Just the ultimate non-breaking, just fully committed person. And watching him play. So we did this marathon for our fundraiser in February. It was duos for 24 hours.
Okay.
And so I got to play with Mark, and then Mark played with Jamie. and
Was that the
Jamie.
LaRonde? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
sorry, but 24-hour like chain of paired actors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. From all over the world, which was
God.
crazy because I forgot about how confusing time zones can be.
Oh yeah.
So thank goodness, like some people were coming early because some people were totally, miscalculating. But actually, it went the other way. So Jamie went with Mark, and then I got to play with Mark, which was hard to play with Mark after he just got to play with Jamie.
Sure.
But the best thing was seeing Jamie make him break.
Yeah.
Like, and that he is that like good at being that straight because he's had to play with Jamie Moyer for all these years and try, like, his goal is to keep a straight face and not let her break him. And her goal is like, oh, I'm going to get you.
Oh.
And they're so incredible.
You can't mess with her stage presence. It's too big.
Oh,
even over Zoom, I don't know how she does it. Like, wow.
yeah, she had this whole like frame set up, and she had props like that. She was making lists. Like, it was just, I mean, yeah, it was like she was being filmed for a scene in a show that had been all planned out. That's the power of like that level of improv. And they keep getting like all these people, Stephanie Weir and Bob, like that Chicago, Rich Talrico, like they're kind of another cluster that I really admire. And they keep getting better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'll be like, okay, I think I'm getting, and then I see them again. I'm like, what? You just move the bar another. Oh, no. Just, you can chase it forever.
Totally. Yeah.
That's why this thing's so addictive. You'll never be perfect at it.
That's right. That's right. Like TJ Jagodowski in his book talks about, you think like, oh, I just got to get through this door. And then you open the door and it's a hallway with a bunch of other doors. Yeah. And that improv is always just opening doors to other doors. And that is what makes it so addictive.
Yeah, it's endless. Yeah.
And then when you get through those doors, you look back like, oh, I haven't been doing that thing I learned 4 doors ago.
Let me circle back.
Yep. Definitely.
Turn back around.
Definitely.
Well, Stacey, thank you so much for joining. Before we let you go, obviously, I'm dropping a link to the Ruby Rocket PI website, rubyrocketpi.com. Is that the best place for people to go check it out, and that'll lead them everywhere else? Is there anything else that you want to
I think so. Yeah, and then they can look for just Ruby Rocket on Instagram. Look for Ruby Rocket Private Detective and not Booth Babe Ruby Rocket, who we had a copyright battle with for a while. But I think she's our, and then there's like Ruby Rocket Popsicles, but Ruby Rocket Private Eye on Instagram, Facebook, and please expect more activity as I fulfill the promise I just if I say I wish I had done it, I better do it, and that's make time for it. So we're gonna get these things out into the world this year. I'm 50 this year. I turned 50, and like by the end of this, before my next birthday, back to the birthday theme.
Right.
Oh yeah.
By my next birthday, these will all be
you said available. It on a podcast, so now you have to do it.
I've said it a lot of times.
We're gonna edit that soundbite and send it to you on your birthday and be like, "Have you fulfilled?"
We are going to blow up your Instagram.
Please do. Hold me accountable. I need it.
Where are them episodes?
And please come to Portland and visit when the world's safe to do so. We'd love to have you at Curious.
I owe James a birthday trip, so this is gonna happen.
Oh, do it, please. Really.
I would love to. And we know Kristen Shear through the Detroit Improv Festival, and she's awesome. I know she's out there working with you.
She is.
Yeah.
She's awesome. She's been here now pretty long time now. We're like going on 4 years, and Elise Rodriguez just came up from Florida Studio Theater and originally from Miami, and she's running she's becoming our new business manager, and this is part of me trying to make that space to focus on my own stuff and not be doing a million jobs. So it's a great community.
Everybody we've ever met through Portland has been amazing. So we would love to eventually make our way out there and hang out with you on your side of town.
Please do. And I've got to get to Detroit.
Yeah, please.
We'll swap trips.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Everyone's got to make these trips before our next birthday.
That's
That's
all
right.
Said it out loud. It's got to happen.
Okay. All right,
all
Bob,
going on the bus.
yours is in April, mine's in March. You're
Mhm.
April what?
10th.
Okay, and I'm March 26th. So
Okay.
so we'll split the difference. By April 1st, we'll have visited each other
Mhm.
and Ruby Rocket will be out. By April 1st.
I personally, I have 364 days to pull this off. So.
Oh, I see. It's
Yeah.
all okay.
Might not be
All
able
right.
to join for.
All right, fair enough. So by my birthday, the Ruby Rockets will be out.
Mhm.
Okay.
By each of your birthdays.
We'll
By
have
April
visited
10th
Portland.
and October
16th.
16th. Okay. I'm writing it down.
All right. Awesome. Thanks again, Stacey. And thanks everyone for joining. Remember to go to the improvnetwork.org and check out all the resources we have to offer. Until next time, thanks for joining. We'll catch you next time on the Improv Network podcast. Bye.
My